From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 2 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Geico, committed to providing service to its auto insurance customers for over 70 years. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO, any time of the day or night.
Smart global investing requires expertise from the ground up. With insights from local experts across the world, we have a unique perspective on global investing. Franklin Templeton Investments. Gain from our perspective.
Somewhere in America, a city comes to life. It moves effortlessly, breathes easily. It flows with clean water. It makes its skyline greener and its population healthier. All to become the kind of city people want to live and work in. Somewhere in America, we've already answered some of the nation's toughest questions, and the over 60,000 people of Siemens are ready to do it again. Siemens answers.
Issue 1, Ryan's Rumble.
For too long, Washington has not been honest with the American people. Washington has been making empty promises to Americans from a government that is going broke.
House Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan this week unveiled the GOP's budget proposal for 2012 and beyond. The Wisconsin Republicans developed the plan, dubbed it, quote, unquote, Path to Prosperity, with advice from Alice Rivlin, former head of the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. Budget Chairman Ryan's Path to Prosperity framework begins with austerity. Item, roll back federal spending, whether it's green energy, solar, wind, geothermal, etc., to farm subsidies, and discretionary spending, and domestic and defense spending will be cut back to 2008 spending levels and frozen for 5 years. Item, cut federal payrolls. Through hiring freezes and attrition, the federal workforce would be cut by 10%. Item, reform Medicare. For those today under the age of 55, that's today, Medicare would be transformed to a system of, quote, premium support, unquote. Beginning roughly 10 years from now, in 2022, Medicare would pay a portion of the premium for private health insurance plan chosen by the seniors themselves. Item, reform Medicaid. Make it a block grant to the states directly. Item, overhaul the tax code. Business and individual tax breaks would be eliminated, with top corporate and personal income tax rates, get this, capped at 25%.
Contained.
Over a 10-year period, Chairman Ryan's proposal cuts $6.2 trillion. That's T as in Thomas, $1 trillion from President Obama's budget. On Twitter, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi lampooned the Ryan path to prosperity as, quote, a path to poverty for America's seniors and children and a road to riches for big oil, unquote.
Question, what impact will Ryan's budget proposal have on the national debate over today's federal deficit? Pat Buchanan.
John, they're going to demonize Ryan, and they're going to basically demagogue his plan, and I don't think his plan is really going to go anywhere in the United States Senate. But I do think this, he has laid out a marker here, a very serious plan about serious issues. It's got a growth factor to it, which is very important, and it's got some very serious cuts that everybody knows we're going to have to make somewhere down the road. I don't think the Ryan plan is going to become law, and I think he's going to be, basically, the Republicans aren't going to get it through. But I think one thing they will have done here is they will have laid down a marker for the future, John. When and if I think this crash that's coming comes, and the Democrats have rejected it, the Republicans will be able to say, we told you so, we tried, we told you it would take pain, you didn't do it, now here's what's happened. I think that's what's being done. They're setting their position now very tough against what's coming down the road.
What's this crash business?
Oh, I think you're going to have a run on the dollar one of these days. The Chinese are stopping buying our debt. The Japanese are going to sell it.
How soon is that going to occur?
I'll tell you, the Fed's going to stop its quantitative easing in June. They stopped buying $100 billion in debt, and so we've all got to buy $125 billion every single month.
What do you think? Gold? We should go into gold?
I've already been in there. I'm deep in there.
You know,
on a run for cover.
Pat writes books about the end of the West, and so I think there's a little hyperbole here. Paul Ryan's budget is not going to go anywhere because even Republicans aren't going to fully support it. I give him credit, he's a serious legislator, but it's a deeply flawed document. It makes wild claims about reducing unemployment. At one point he said 2-point-something%, and then the Heritage Foundation, where he allegedly got the number, quickly scrubbed that number from their website and adjusted it up to 4-point-something%, which he can't really document.
Wow.
So there are wild claims that he can't back up. And second, 2/3 of the heaviest cuts come from the poorest people in this country, and he rewards people at the top, which would only accelerate the distance between the super rich and everybody else in this country. So it's a starting point for conversation, which we need to have. And I think he's given the Democrats a great gift, because his comments about Medicare and Medicaid are simply too good to not demonize.
What do you think of that, the Heritage? Who scrubbed first? Was it the Heritage Foundation or was it
I think it was
Ryan?
the Heritage Foundation. My understanding, Heritage had that 2.8 number in there, and
Well,
instead they went to the
they
4. But the idea that anyone can project with any precision what the unemployment rate is going to be in 2015 is just ridiculous. So I think Ryan would have been better to just leave that all to the side. But what we have here, John, is we have set up a conflict of visions, obviously. We have an unsustainable fiscal situation in this country. There are two ways to go. One is ever higher taxes and price controls on health care to try to control the cost of health care, which is basically the Democratic plan, but they're too cowardly to be explicit about it. Or we can get spending under control, take first steps to getting these entitlements under control with no tax increases and with no price controls. And that is the Ryan plan, which will become the lowest common denominator for Republican presidential candidates in 2012.
Really? So it's going to be president in every primary?
Well, not every candidate will endorse every jot and tittle of it,
How can
but
they
it will be the standard by which candidates will be judged.
Okay, so
Pat's chuckling.
Don't do it.
It'll be on the platform. And we're going to see this again and again in every primary.
It'll be the basic benchmark for Republican policy. It is comprehensive. It is compelling.
Yeah.
Every conservative worth his salt has endorsed it. So it'll be very difficult for candidates to get away from it.
Do you remember the presidential commission called Simpson-Bowles Commission?
I do.
What happened to that?
Well,
what does Ryan do to the Simpson-Bowles Commission?
The best case scenario politically, and I think it's likelier, as Eleanor says, and Pat says, Democrats will just demagogue the hell out of this and hope the conversation goes away. But the best case scenario politically is Ryan makes Bowles-Simpson look more centrist and creates at least political momentum within the halls of Congress to go
more
towards something like that.
You think Bowles-Simpson was liberal?
Compared to Ryan.
Oh, come on now.
It's
Ryan is reverse Robin Hood. This is Reaganomics on steroids. I mean, the guy has tax breaks for the rich, and all the pain is shifted to Medicare and Medicaid recipients, senior citizens, etc. No, Eleanor's right that this is, and you're right too, this is a beginning of a conversation, and Democrats shouldn't run from it. Both sides have been cowardly in addressing specifics about the deficit. It's just that there's more anxiety on the right. The left, with the exception of Dick Cheney and a few others who have said deficits don't matter, especially when there's something they want to buy. There hasn't been that sense of panic, and there's no need to panic. I notice Ryan left Social Security out, which he should. Social Security is not insolvent, contrary to those who say it's bankrupt and blah, blah, blah. But sensibly, Medicare does need to be dealt with one way or the other.
And Medicaid's a block grant.
Medicaid's block grant, which means you're going to, well, not now, but under Ryan's plan,
right.
it would be, which means you're going to have some shortfalls.
You don't see anything. You don't see anything in the Ryan plan that you like?
Oh, I see a lot that I like. I just see a lot that I don't like.
Do you think it's going to go away, or do you
problem.
agree with him that this is going to be a kind of a benchmark in every primary coming up?
It's going to be in the platform where it'll be ignored, like most platforms are. But this is a moral document. It does set priorities for what the Republicans are about, just like Democrats' platforms set priorities for them. I think Simpson-Bowles made a lot of sense and tried to balance the pain on both sides.
Clarence,
unfortunately, they haven't acted on it.
Do you think a star has been born here?
Oh, young Ryan?
Yeah.
Well, why not? Everybody else is running for the Republican nomination. Why shouldn't he?
You think he's running for the nomination?
No, John. Let me tell you about
You think a star has been born?
Well, he lacks charisma on that score, but he's great with numbers.
You think the American people are feel that Ryan is telling it like it is?
I think there's going to be a backlash against Ryan.
Do they think that he's
There's going to be a backlash, John. Remember that woman at the town hall who said, "Keep the government's hands off my Medicare"? You know, those folks are going to say, "What?"
Well, Ryan
is perceived by the American people as a wonk. But he's a wonk that tells the truth, and he's a smart wonk.
No, but
he's a conservative wonk.
Yes
He's
or
a conservative wonk.
The headlines he got.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, but let me talk about the politics of 2012. I think that if you're a presidential candidate in 2012, what I would say is, Paul Ryan is, just as you said, this is a guy of courage. He's got some vision. He's got some good ideas in there. I don't embrace them all, and there are some things in there I'm really going to go for, but I'm going to have my own plan. But do not embrace the Ryan plan if you're a presidential candidate.
Do you think that you could successfully argue Ryan out of any position that he has, or would he argue you out of your position?
No, listen, I would cut defense, I would cut foreign policy, I would do a lot of things. I would say Social Security's, you got to make changes there.
Do you think he could give you arguments that would cause you to change your mind?
He's a bright fellow,
He's
John.
a
He
hero.
probably
You think he could debate you and successfully convince you
I'll
that
give him the benefit
you
of
were
the
less perfect than he
I
was?
would give him the benefit of the doubt. He'd do a good job.
He's a hero to a small segment of the electorate, and that is the conservatives who think that liberal programs are the fault of everything that's going wrong. The rest of the country depends on those liberal programs, and he wants to turn Medicare into what is called a premium support program.
What's wrong with that?
And what's wrong with it is the government then pays a certain premium as health care costs go up.
Is there any way,
as costs go up, the recipient then bears the cost. He touts support from Alice Rivlin, who has said she does not support the plan as he has put it forward. He gets credit for all this courage, but he doesn't touch anybody over the age of 55 because they're the ones who vote.
That's one explanation. Right. Is there anyone who's going to be a truth teller and a perceptive truth teller who is not going to have to address the Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security?
Course, but the headlines he got this week are all about his claims that cannot be documented.
No, I'm saying
he got terrible headlines.
He invaded a territory, the entitlement territory that no one goes into. As long as I've been doing this show, they have never gone into that. He went into it.
The Simpson-Bowles Commission went into it, and the President Obama, he created that commission, and Paul Ryan voted against their product. So how bold is that? He voted against it.
The Simpson-Bowles Committee was holding on to
Obamacare.
Big government. This guy wants to shrink the government, the federal government.
John,
really shrink it.
John, with all due respect, Eleanor, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Because 5 minutes ago, you're saying how this is going to get demagogued and so politically vulnerable. Then you turn around and say he's not politically courageous. Of course he's politically courageous, even to touch these programs for people under 55. And this is the key thing about Medicare. Medicare is a driver of healthcare inflation in this country. And what Ryan is trying to do is inject an element of market competition into healthcare that's not there now. Medicare is a giant check-writing operation that drives fraud and costs up.
Medicare is the most popular and the most efficient program in this
country.
It's
not efficient. It is not. No serious healthcare economist would say Medicare is efficient.
But the funny thing is, though,
including doctors.
System
exit question on the merit.
And Medicare is a huge part of it.
Exit question on the merit. Is the path to prosperity a sound plan, that's his plan, for cutting the deficit? A sound plan.
I think it is sound. I think it's courageous. And I don't think it's going anywhere for the simple reason. Take a look at Clarence and Eleanor and their response.
Wow.
And I'm saying
that represents that's the Democratic
party of no.
That's the Democratic
rational and substantive debate is another question.
That's the Democratic Senate.
It's not fair to put the whole burden of deficit reduction on poorer people in this country. There is no revenue increases here. He doesn't go after oil subsidies. He keeps tax breaks in place and adds more to the wealthy. It is not. It's not a document that can sell in
if you look at Medicare,
not everybody is rich.
If you look at the Medicare reforms, an element of it is means testing.
Right.
He's going to give more to people who are poor and sicker. Why are we giving Medicare to people that are upper middle class or better? Paul Ryan is actually courageous enough to take that on and is getting attacked by it.
Well,
by our
Medicare
colleagues
should be dealt with, as is making the taxes more simplified. But that's the kind of debate that we're not having now.
What about Social Security?
It's not a crisis, John. 2037, it's solvent until then. And even then, all you got to do is lift the caps. That's all you got to do. Why are there caps on Social Security? Lift the caps.
Raise taxes. That's always the answer. Raise taxes.
15% tax, 12% tax increase.
I'm saying
raise taxes.
I know you don't want to save Social Security, but that's the way to do it.
All right, we got to get out. A wonk star has been born. Issue 2, Architect of Atrocity.
We simply cannot allow a trial to be delayed any longer for the victims of the 9/11 attacks or for their family members who have waited for nearly a decade.
Commander-in-Chief Barack Obama has given up plans to try in a civilian court the architect of the 9/11 Twin Towers atrocity, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Mohammed will be tried by a military court at the Guantanamo Bay, Cuba detention facility. The decision was announced on Monday by Attorney General Eric Holder. This is one of the highest profile policy reversals by the Obama White House. When campaigning for president, Senator Obama then sought both to close Guantanamo and to treat detainees on the same legal basis as an ordinary U.S. citizen. After his election 2 years ago, Mr. Obama again pushed for Mohammed to be tried in a civilian court in New York City, a trial that would have cost an estimated $1 billion, that's B as in boy, $billion. New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg was outraged at the idea on both cost and security grounds. But Congress passed a law that forbade the transfer of all Guantanamo detainees, present and future, to U.S. soil for detention and for trial. So the trial location problem went away. Holder on Monday said that Congress forced the administration's hand, and he was perceptibly angry.
I know this case in a way that members of Congress do not. I have looked at the files. I've spoken to the prosecutors. So do I know better than them? Yes.
New York Republican Congressman Peter King lauded Congress's decision denying 9/11 co-conspirators a civilian trial.
American people realized how wrong it was to hold a civilian trial anywhere in New York or anywhere on the continental United States.
Is it smart politics for Attorney General Holder to kvetch that he knows better than members of Congress when it comes to prosecuting Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Pat?
I don't think it is, John.
You think it was political immaturity on his part?
Yeah, I really do. Look, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is a foreigner, an alien, a mass murderer who killed Americans. He's not like McVeigh, who's an American citizen, or even Charlie Manson. This guy's a foreigner in combat, regular combat and war, John. He would be taken out for this kind of atrocity, put up against a wall, and shot. And that's under the rules of Geneva. He ought to be tried as what he is, and he's going to be tried right where he should be, right down there at Guantanamo Bay.
Appropriately, we did not line him up and shoot him, and I think we have tried foreign-born terrorists in this country, and they're successfully being held in maximum security prisons. And I think that the Attorney General wanted to let the public know that this is a congressional decision, and with Congress's approval rating at something like 11%, I think kvetching about a congressional decision does not hurt you.
Not about this one.
Do you think, and I'm not arguing for this, but I think it should be raised, that if he is euthanized by capital punishment, that he will live on forever as a martyr in the terrorist and the aborting terrorist community, and that it would be better for him to be incarcerated for the rest of his life in Guantanamo or somewhere, rather than kill him.
He can be incarcerated on American soil. I haven't noticed any
terrorists
breaking out of prison.
Would he be converted to a martyr if he dies? He will never be forgotten. Whereas if he lives, he will be forgotten.
Punishment, and I don't think that's in the cards for him. I think he will be incarcerated probably for the rest of his life, getting free medical care.
You mean on the grounds that I'm saying? Otherwise, it would make him a martyr that would live forever. if he's killed.
John,
he's not exactly a religious hero.
Even if that's true, he deserves a death sentence, and it's an unfortunate collateral effect that you can't help.
John, he's not.
Really?
Yeah.
John,
Really? Yeah. Since when did politics become that? An
This isn't politics, this is
collateral
justice.
effect.
John, you'd
This
be
is
right.
politics. This
We
is
can live
politics.
with that
If this
collateral.
was- if this was Bush and Cheney wanting to
your
try
argument would be
KSM
right.
in New York,
Let him hear.
if this was Bush and Cheney wanted to try KSM in New York, there wouldn't be any kind of a
Yes, there
reaction
is.
from
You think Chuck
the right.
Schumer would
You know,
accept it?
you know, really.
He says we
Really?
can't do that. It'll cause riot.
He
We
had
this
a
whole
bunch of
mosque
other.
controversy
He
going on.
tried other terrorists here in American soil. There wasn't a peep. I'd love to
So
see
you think
Aaron
Chuck
Holder and
Schumer
Peter
was playing
King.
politics
I'd love to see
by
Peter
attacking
King and
Aaron
Aaron
Holder's
Holder
playing
on a
a
boxing
boxing
ring.
ring.
Two New Yorkers together, just going at it. Because that's what this is about. You know, this is about a lot of emotions being
You
played
want to see them in a
We got a
bar?
serious
Would you
problem
rather see
here
them
about
in a
dealing with
bar
PLO.
or in a wrestling match or in a boxing ring?
I'm not going to go into details. Send it to
John,
committee.
let me make your point. Your point is well taken. If this were Osama bin Laden, I would agree with you because Osama bin Laden is an enormous figure, and you ought to put him in jail for the rest of his life. I don't think KSM is a really charismatic figure.
Right.
He's not on T-shirts like Che Guevara, but I think if it were Osama bin Laden, I would agree with you, life imprisonment.
All right, that's all I need, Pat. I wanted that approval. Issue 3, sesquicentennial.
April 12, 1861, 150 years ago this coming Tuesday. Confederate shots rained down on the Union military base in Charleston, South Carolina, Fort Sumter. After 34 hours of shelling, the fort fell. The American Civil War began. 11 southern states seceded from the Union. First South Carolina, then in the order of secession, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina. These states were agrarian societies then, dependent on slaves working the fields, economic entities with cultural hierarchies the states were unwilling to give up. Together they formed the Confederate States of America. They elected Jefferson Davis as their president, opposing President Abraham Lincoln, who governed the Union. The military general of the Confederacy was Robert E. Lee. Ulysses S. Grant served as general of the Union. The bloody conflict ended 4 years later, almost exactly to the day, April 9, 1865. When the fighting did finally stop, Lincoln's Union forces had won. 600,000 Americans died. Slavery was abolished. The Union held. Question: is the Union altogether intact today? Secessionist echoes, if not movements, still occur. Alaska. The Alaska Independence Party wants a referendum to permit voting for independence for Alaska. Item: Hawaii. Native Hawaiians want to secede from the mainland. Item: Vermont. 13% of Vermonters want to secede. Item: Texas. 18% would vote to secede. Texas Republican Governor Rick Perry hinted at the possibility of a Texas secession. Quote, I believe the federal government has become oppressive. I believe it's become oppressive in its size, its intrusion in the lives of its citizens, and its interference with the affairs of our state.
Rich Lowry, what do you think of the condition of the Union?
I think it's pretty strong, John, but if it's my vote for any state to go, I say Vermont.
Why Vermont?
You want the Vermont.
Definitely Vermont over Texas any day of the week.
I say
So the union is okay.
Right.
It's a semi-comical, but it's a semi-serious question.
Well, there are a lot of movements, John, but look, there's going to be no geographic secession. That's out of the question. It was decided in 1865. But there are a lot of movements. You mentioned Hawaii. There's a movement to establish, and went through part of Congress, to establish a state legislature which was of people of Hawaiian blood alone because the state had been taken away from them. You get a lot of these movements like this. Vermont is these small movements and stuff. The League of the South. But it's not going anywhere in terms of seceding and breaking up the country.
The case can be made by a state that the federal government is too big and the taxation is too great. We ought to get out of the federal government. we ought to get out of the union.
Sounds familiar,
and go
John.
our own way.
Sounds familiar. There was a very fierce debate in the 1850s about that, in fact, and it was settled in 1865, like Pat said. But it's funny
since
though.
Then the government has what? Well, it's incalculable the extent to which, in relation to state power, the federal authority has grown.
Well, like I say, you sound like Rick Perry. I mean, the fact is nobody ever lost a vote in Texas, as far as I know, by advocating for the Republic of Texas, quote unquote. Very serious thing. Folks in the rest of the country don't realize how much this means to some states. When I moved from the land of Lincoln down to the Virginia area, I was amazed.
What is there that could prevent this from ever happening today?
We still have
Army.
The U.S. Army, John.
The U.S. Army. Not only that, but what?
The Air Force.
The National Guard. Predictions, Pat.
Tough time for Israel this fall. The General Assembly in September. The General Assembly will vote to recognize a Palestinian state as sovereign on the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. Overwhelming vote.
Wow.
The confrontation over the 2011 budget will expose the deepening fissures between Speaker John Boehner and his majority leader, Eric Cantor.
Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker does not get recalled because we're seeing Wisconsin, the left's bark is much worse than its bite and its backlash against the union reforms.
Donald Trump's not going to run for president, but he'll do a TV show with Sarah Palin, kvetching with the stars.
The New York Times has a paywall where you have to pay to read the New York Times online. I predict that it will fail within a year. Bye-bye. You agree?
Geico, committed to providing service to its auto insurance customers for over 70 years. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO, any time of the day or night.
How does an investment manager stand the test of time? By taking the long view through all market cycles and keeping a close eye on risk. Franklin Templeton Investments, a solid approach to investing for over 60 years. Gain from our perspective.
If. For such a small word, it packs a wallop. If I live to 100, if Social Security isn't enough, if my heart gets broken, if she says yes. We believe IF should never hold you back. IF should be managed with a plan that builds on what you already have. Together, we can create a personal safety net, a launching pad for all those brilliant ifs in the middle of life. You can call on our expertise and get guarantees for the if in life. After all, we're MetLife.